Sup nerds, I'm Tom.
And we're doodling some dungeons.
Yep, he doesn't really match my energy, but you get the point. So Doodle Dungeon is a roll and write by Pegasus Spiel, not by Steve Jackson Games, even though it totally looks like it would be because it has the same artist as all the Munchkin games, and it actually does feel kind of like a Munchkin game a little bit.
Now, it's not a true roll and write, because it's actually like a draw cards and...
Yeah, it's a flip and fill or whatever you want to call them. But so it's in that category, and it's a very unique one. Has several phases. You build a dungeon, and then you move through a dungeon. So the whole roll some dice, draft it, and then mark off something on your sheet in a puzzly way is out the window with this one.
Absolutely. So you are actually... Like, you have this grid, and you are drawing out a dungeon on it, and they're kind enough to give you stencils because I suck at drawing. And so you actually will draft these cards out, and they will, on the bottom, it gives you what you're adding to your dungeon, so in the order that it's out there. So, like, here you have these walls, and you're going to draw the walls in the same configuration. You can change the orientation, but if you have, like, these two that are diagonal, you have to draw the two diagonal onto your board, and you're going to draft 14 cards total until you have a complete dungeon. Now, you may have like big holes in it or gaps, but 14 cards is everything that you're going to add to your dungeon.
So you build the dungeon is the phase one with the drafting of the cards. The cards are actually like two halves. You're only looking at the bottom half to build the dungeon, and then the top half is going to be significant later on. Then you pass the dungeon to the left, and on another player's dungeon, you're going to draw a path through, which is why it's really important when you're putting all the stuff in the dungeon that you don't make like areas where you can't enter or whatever. You have to go from the top corner all the way to the bottom corner. That person's going to draw a path that a hero is going to go. And it's kind of interesting the incentives that you have for how you draw that path, because you want the hero to live, and you also want the hero to kill as many monsters as they can, because the monsters are worth points. If the monsters are hiding treasure, they're going to get points for the treasure. And for every health the guy still has, if he lives, the person whose dungeon it is going to lose that many points.
So you have that adventurer who's going through your dungeon, basically taking all your points, because you want to have everything still in your dungeon, and the adventurer to have as little life as possible. So as he goes through and fights each of the monsters that he crosses their path, there is a battle where you roll these dice and see, like, the adventurer always has 20 strength, and the monsters depend on how you roll the dice. So then they fight. If the adventurer wins, then the monster dies, and you don't get points for it. But if the monster wins, the monster stays on the board, and the adventurer loses health depending on what type of monster it is.
Now you can also upgrade certain things on the board. So you can upgrade the goblins, orcs, and dragons individually to make them stronger, so they could have a +4, a +6, a +8, or whatever to whatever you roll, so they have a higher likelihood of hitting that 20. And here I'm going to get into some of my complaints with the game, is the cards, which actually we didn't mention. In that last phase, when you're moving the adventurer, you can play cards to either make the dungeon harder for your adventurer, or play cards on other players to make the adventurer better, or make the dungeon easier for that adventurer. You need to have a decent amount of cards. If you start with just having one card, and throughout the first round of the game, you can mark off little things to upgrade that, and you really want to. Having just one card is a pretty big detriment, especially if other people have multiple. You got to be like, oh yeah, no. I mean, I know I put all of my points into the traps and making the traps do more damage, but you just play a card to completely avoid my traps? Well, there goes my strategy out the window.
And that's an important thing to know, is like looking through the deck of what is available. So like you have the bombs where you can kill a monster who's not on your path. So if you know you've got a lot of bombs, then you don't want to have every monster on your path, or else the bombs are worthless. And if you see your opponent putting a lot of traps on there, then you may want to get the avoid trap cards to make them basically lose those points, because they'd be gaining points by hurting the adventurer.
And I also think this game is better with more players, because it can feel less like you're trying to build something against your
it's less
opponent.
me versus you,
and more like this card, like you just said, I don't want to draw on the path if this card is only for things that are not on the path. Well, whatever, just take whatever cards you want, and they'll work against somebody.
And it gets a little bit munchkin-y there too, where it's
Yeah,
like everybody's kind of throwing stuff at everybody.
And everybody could gang up on one person type of thing.
But you can only have 2 of the red cards on your dungeon at a time, so it's not like we can all just say, you know what?
Okay, I've got 2 dungeons. Okay, get rid of this one. Guess who's getting another one?
Yeah.
You know? Hey nerds, Tom here. One thing that Wes and I forgot to mention when we recorded this video is that our copy came with a promo pack, which is 3 new types of cards to just mix into the deck and give you more variability. 2 of the cards are fun and cool, and I kind of enjoy them, and one of them sucks super hard. It's this slime thing that like the hero gets trapped in, and unless the hero can defeat the monster, meaning that you roll less than a 20, the hero stays there and takes a damage every time he doesn't roll less than a 20, but the monster has plus 14 strength, which means you have to roll a 5 or less. And in a game, everybody wants to draft those, and it was actually a game where each one of us had a slime monster, so the remainder of the game just stopped, and we just run around, roll, wasn't a 5, take a damage, your turn, roll, wasn't a 5, take a damage. And it was so bad to the point where we were like, are we getting this wrong? Like, are we misinterpreting this? And we kept reading it like, no, I think that's what we're supposed to do. It's just terrible. So if you play and you use this promo pack, I would say either don't use that card or modify it like crazy. Make it a +7 or something. Anywho, back to the video. It's almost something like you need to know a couple of things before we play.
Yeah, it's a negative that you kind of have to, because once you understand, like, hey, it's really important to upgrade and have 2 or 3 cards in hand, because that drastically changes the way the game feels. Like, know that, account for it, and then it's not really a negative anymore, other than the fact that, like, it's something like, hey, you really need to do this.
Yeah, like, just FYI, this is the type of game we're playing. Whether it looks like this or not, and I think the artwork does a really good job in showing that this is just a wacky, silly, funny game, especially because all of the random, right? Okay, my dragon can be at a +12, but if I roll 2 2s,
yeah.
You know? But you have to be okay with that. It's that type of game. And you will have fun if you're doing that and you're all goofed around, you're having a couple of beers. This is really like a more advanced beer and pretzels type of game.
Yeah.
You know, and I think the only issues anybody would have would really be if A, they don't like that type of game, or B, they didn't expect it to be that type of game.
Yeah. I would say so. Now, the only other negative that I really have, and I haven't found the perfect way to fix it, but with using the 1-color pencil to draw all the different shapes onto your board, I felt like it can get a little cluttered, and it can be easy to get lost on here and be like, okay, I'm looking for a goblin, if you're like, where are the goblins? It's not super apparent what's where because it's a bunch of like silhouettes. So I almost think that if you were able to play it with like colored pencils and each monster was a different color, that would really help and it would make the game a little more vibrant. The only downside to that is that they do include an eraser because you can erase things in the game, and with like the illegal placements, like I had to go back and like mulligan a bunch because I'm like halfway through the game, like, oh, whoops, I can't do that.
Yeah, I don't know how erasable colored pencils are. So it could be beneficial, but it could mess the game up a bunch. And I know looking at these like pictures of Goblin, Orc, and Dragon, the ones you draw aren't going to be that super distinguishable, I would say. But the best, I know we're coming off a bit negative. We just listed a bunch of negatives, but overall, I did enjoy the game. I do think it's really clever, mainly because I've reviewed a couple different roll and writes recently, Clever Cubed and Hadrian's Wall and Trois Dice Game and Bravo. And one of the things I've been saying in all of those is, I like some of these games are good and they're fun and whatever, but they don't separate themselves very much. It's still, like I said at the beginning of this video, roll a dice, pick one, mark something off on a sheet in a puzzly way, and try and score points. The fact that this is not that, and it takes a totally different look at the roll and write type genre, it gets so much praise for me just for that. And I think it does work in that avenue.
And I will say, I think I liked this game more than you did. Because I thought this game was fantastic. I really loved the strategizing your dungeon, the hiding your treasure, thinking like, okay, I'm going to put this treasure here where like maybe this monster is super easy to kill, but it's kind of out of the way. And you're going to think like, oh, that's a stupid little weak guy. I'm not going to go kill him. There's no way you had him guard a treasure, and then I get a bunch of points for that treasure. Or you build, like, the complicated net. Like, you have to get all the way through all these bad guys just to get over here, and that's where the treasure is. Or you built, like, the funnel of death. When you first go into the dungeon, it's just a long, straight hallway with, like, trap. So, like, that really, like, it sucks coming into it.
Yeah.
But it's how you build your dungeon, because again, it's not my hero going through your dungeon. It's just we're all trying to build a dungeon that can withstand a hero. I don't know. I thought it was a fantastic game. Absolutely,
I like it. You're right. You're probably right that you like it a bit better than me. But again, I initially came at it as like, oh, it's another roll and write game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not it's a Munchkin Lee type. I know it's not made by the company that makes Munchkin. But it does feel that way. A very silly. We're gonna laugh a lot. Ha ha ha! Look at what happened to this guy.
Yeah.
He fell in some spikes. Ha ha ha!
If you are looking to pick up a copy of Doodle Dungeon, there will be a purchase link down in the description box. I think you should check it out.
Also down there is going to be a link for our sponsor, which is Game Toppers. It's the table we're filming on right now. We also have other pictures and B-roll throughout the video that was on a Game Topper. So, you know, you got it from like different angles and stuff. So that's cool.
Either way, there's also a subscribe button down there, which I definitely recommend you click on with the little bell underneath the thumbs up that you should click on as well. Because once you do all those things, you'll never be bored.
Yeah, and send us money in the mail.